The room was painted in silence, the kind that hums before it breaks. The clock above the mirror blinked 11:58 p.m., and in that restless minute, the actor sat alone, the screen of his laptop flickering against a face that had performed too many emotions to remember what a real one felt like. Outside, the night was heavy with rain and nerves, power lines trembled like veins. Menglong had been typing for 47 minutes, every pause a negotiation with something unseen. The email had no subject line, only the first words: "If you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage." 2 minutes later, the city went black. The email was never sent. Weeks passed before the file reached me, a scratched USB taped to a photograph of the actor at that same desk, the laptop still glowing in a sea of dark. When I plugged it in, the screen flickered as if remembering. The folder was titled Last Scene. Inside were half-finished scripts, uncut audio, and one unsent message frozen at 11:59 p.m. Everyone said the outage was just another grid failure. But the city records told a different story. That particular transformer had been replaced 2 weeks earlier. It shouldn't have failed. I met the night guard from the opposite building. He spoke in the kind of whisper that sticks to your skin. "The lights didn't just die," he said. "They gasped." That word stayed with me, gasped, as if the entire block inhaled once and never exhaled again. Menglong's email address wasn't public, it was tied to an alias no one in his circle recognized. The messages weren't to fans or agents. They read like confessions written as scripts, addressed to ghosts. The one who knows. The voice behind the door. And on the final night, the mirror. "You said every performance hides a truth. Tonight, I'm done hiding." That line was timestamped 11:59 and 28 seconds p.m., exactly 2 seconds before the system logged a forced shutdown. I traced the grid data and found a single interference point directly beneath his building. A remote disconnection signal. "That's impossible," said the engineer I consulted. Someone inside the system flipped that switch. The hallway camera outside his apartment captured a shadow passing just before the blackout, slow, deliberate, counting its own steps. The frame froze on the doorknob turning. Then darkness. The audio file on the USB was worse. It began as static, then a voice: "If this doesn't send, maybe it's for the best," followed by a piano note, soft, trembling, lonely. The same note from a melody Menglong played during his final live show 3 days earlier. A lighting technician who'd worked with him finally agreed to meet me in a dim tea shop. Rain drummed against the glass like fingertips on a drum. He didn't want to be recorded. He knew someone was watching him, he said. He used to check every camera twice. Said one day the footage would outlive him. When I asked about the email, the technician's hands shook. He said he'd written something that could break everything open. But he wasn't sure the world deserved to read it. Forensics on the USB revealed that the email wasn't a single draft, it had been rewritten 26 times. Each version ended differently, some hopeful, some terrified, until the last one stopped mid-sentence. "You said truth should live forever, but what if the cost?" Nothing after that. When power finally returned to the district at 12:21 a.m., every apartment came back to life except his. The breaker switch in his unit had been turned off manually, from the inside. Neighbors reported hearing a faint melody echoing through the corridor afterward, one piano note repeating until it faded. The technician swore there was no piano in the building. During the cleanup, the production company found a second laptop, charred motherboard, burnt casing, but its storage drive survived. Inside it was a folder titled Drafts to the End. The first document opened with the same words as the unfinished email: "If you're reading this, it means I finally found the courage." But this version went further. "You once told me art was immortal because it lives in silence. But silence is the loudest lie. They'll turn this story into light and applause, but not truth. So I'm sending this, if I can, before they cut the power again." There was no timestamp, only a buried tag that read "Restored, 3 days after." Who restored it? No one claimed to. The phrase "before they cut the power again" kept echoing in my head. It wasn't poetic. It was a warning. Someone didn't want the message leaving that room. When I slowed the final seconds of the audio recording, beneath the static I heard a faint click, the exact tone of a mouse button. Then a sound like a message being sent. But the email never appeared in any recipient's inbox. Server logs showed connection lost at 11:59 and 59 seconds p.m. 1 second before the blackout. I returned to the apartment weeks later. The furniture was gone, the paint fresh, yet the air still hummed like memory. I set my recorder on the floor and asked the silence what Menglong had tried to send. For 60 seconds nothing happened. Then the light above me flickered, not out, but dim, pulsing like breath. From somewhere in the pipes came a low piano note. It repeated, steady, patient. People say the email was never sent, but maybe it found another route, through broken circuits, through data ghosts, through whatever space hums between a shutdown and a restart. Maybe it reached the only place that could hold it, the silence between heartbeats. Because some messages aren't meant to be opened. They're meant to haunt. And in the static that lingers after the power cuts, if you listen closely, you can still hear the soft rhythm of typing, someone finishing a sentence that refuses to end, someone whispering into the dark. Send. The message that never sent refuses to die. I've seen the file so many times that I can recite its pauses by heart. Every time I open it, the cursor still blinks as if waiting for Menglong to finish the sentence. I thought the story ended that night, when the lights cut and the actor vanished into his own silence, but silence, it turns out, can echo. 3 weeks after the blackout, I returned to the building again. Rain followed me like it remembered my name. The landlord had changed the locks, but someone had already broken in before me. The air inside felt charged, thin, trembling with that same metallic hum that filled the recordings. The curtains were gone. The walls were clean. But in the corner, on the wallpaper beneath a fresh coat of paint, faint letters pushed through. They spelled a single word in the dim light, send. I set my recorder on the windowsill. You tried once, I said into the emptiness. What stopped you? The room creaked as if taking a breath. A flicker, then a low electric pop from the socket near the desk. My laptop lit up on its own, Wi-Fi off, battery almost dead. On the screen, the same unsent email appeared, no USB attached, no files inserted. But this time, one more line had been added. You weren't supposed to find me. The words typed themselves while I watched, the cursor blinking with mechanical heartbeat precision. I slammed the lid shut, but the tapping didn't stop. It came from inside the wall now, slow and deliberate, like keys being pressed on the other side of plaster. When I told the technician from before, he didn't look surprised. That apartment is wired wrong, he said quietly. The circuit shouldn't carry current when the power's off. But something still feeds it. Like it's alive. He offered to take me to the control room beneath the building, the same one that had triggered the blackout. The stairwell smelled of dust and warm metal. When we opened the breaker cabinet, a small red indicator light still blinked. Every other circuit was labeled, but this one wasn't. Just a strip of black tape and the word manual. He flicked his flashlight toward me. That's the switch that was pulled that night. Who pulled it? Whoever didn't want Menglong's message leaving the building. His words hung heavy in the dark. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep within the pipes, came that same piano note. Later that night, I replayed the last seconds of the audio from the USB. The static broke differently this time. Slowed down, the sound revealed something new, breathing, fast and panicked, right before the power failed. And beneath it, the sound of typing. The final keystroke was the letter D. The last letter of send. The file ended mid-echo, as if the rest of the word had been swallowed by darkness. A sound engineer I knew owed me a favor. I brought him the corrupted footage to analyze frame by frame. He pointed to the reflection on the screen, something I'd missed before. A faint silhouette behind the actor. Too tall to be him, standing perfectly still. You sure this isn't a double exposure? He asked. I shook my head. The timestamp matched the moment Menglong tried to send the email. When the screen froze, the shadow moved closer. We both sat there, speechless, as the image distorted. The static seemed to breathe. There's something embedded in the signal, the engineer murmured. He adjusted the frequency bands until the static transformed into faint whispers layered like an unfinished score. One line stood out. The truth isn't deleted. It's delayed. We both leaned back, and for the first time I realized how cold the room had become. 2 days later, I received another envelope, no sender, no markings, just a thin slip of film inside. When projected, it showed the same scene again, Menglong sitting at his desk. But now, faint writing crawled across the wall behind him. If I can't send it, someone will. I don't know who sent me that film. I only know it wasn't a copy. It was shot from a slightly different angle, one the building cameras didn't have. I went back one last time before the city sealed the property for demolition. The walls were stripped bare. The desk was gone. But near the floorboards, I found something wedged deep in the cracks, a key with numbers engraved on its stem, 1159. When I touched it, the light above me flickered again, exactly once. Then I heard it, typing. Not mechanical, not digital. Real. Slow. Heavy. It came from my recorder, though it wasn't connected to any input. I hit play. The screen filled with lines of new text forming on its own. The message never needed power. Only witness. The sound of the piano returned, one single note repeating, then a second, higher, forming a pattern. The melody matched the heartbeat pulse hidden in the earlier files. It wasn't random. It was binary. I translated it. It spelled out one phrase, Unsent. I felt the air tighten around me as if the room had been holding that breath since the night of the blackout. The light dimmed, the recording stopped, and somewhere, either through static or memory, I heard Menglong's voice again, faint, breaking like a radio signal trying to stay alive. You can't delete what's already been delivered. The next morning, my inbox had a new message. No address. No subject. Just an attachment labeled sentcopy.ml. When I opened it, the contents of his final unsent email unfolded word for word, but at the bottom, something new had been added. Thank you for finishing it. I checked the metadata. The timestamp read exactly 11:59 p.m., the same time the original power cut had occurred, but dated to the night I was in his apartment. Maybe that was coincidence. Maybe not. I still have the file. Sometimes it opens on its own when my laptop wakes from sleep. The cursor blinks, steady and alive, waiting for something. I used to close it, terrified it would overwrite itself. Now I let it sit. Because I've learned something from you, Menglong. Some stories don't end when the lights go out. They wait for someone else to press send.